The courtroom went silent the moment Meri pulled out a second DNA report. Her voice trembled, but her hand was steady. "Your Honor," she said, "the test Robyn submitted was faked." All eyes turned to Robyn, who froze like time had stopped. And before she could open her mouth to speak, the court officer stepped forward, handing the judge a sworn affidavit that would set the entire Brown family on fire. What if everything you thought you knew about paternity, trust funds, and loyalty was based on a lie? Stay with this story, because the results of the second DNA test will change everything. Comment at the end and tell us, do you think Robyn planned it all from the start, or was she just protecting her daughter? It began like any other court morning. Routine filings, brief tension in the air, and a crowd of spectators leaning forward in the gallery, hungry for headlines. But no one, not even the reporters with pre-written drafts, expected what Meri Brown would walk into court with that day. The air in the courtroom smelled like paper, ink, and nerves. Judge Ramirez sat tall behind the bench, stoic, calm, and expressionless. But under that calm, even he could feel the pulse of something dangerous coming. Robyn sat beside Kody, her hands clasped tightly on the table. Her knuckles were pale white. Kody didn't even look at her. His arms were folded, eyes locked on the ground, like he was trying to disappear into the wood paneling. Meri stood alone, like she had done so many times before. Alone, but not weak. "Your Honor," she said clearly, lifting a folder from her purse, "I'd like to submit new evidence. It relates to the paternity results Robyn Brown previously entered into record," the courtroom murmured. Robyn's eyes widened, and Christine, seated behind Meri in the gallery, leaned forward, brows furrowed. Judge Ramirez extended a hand. "Approach." Meri walked with calm purpose, placing the folder gently in the judge's hand. That test was switched. "This is the original." They thought Meri had walked away years ago, but today she came armed. Judge Ramirez's eyes darted across the page. His mouth parted. Then he looked at the clerk and nodded. "Enter this into evidence. Clear the courtroom, except for direct family." Gasps, audible outrage. Reporters were escorted out. Producers protested, citing filming rights, but the bailiffs stood firm. One even removed a TLC boom mic operator by the collar. The doors shut with a heavy finality. Inside the courtroom, the silence now turned dangerous. Robyn's voice finally broke through. "This is slander. She's trying to twist everything just to hurt me." But before the judge could respond, Meri turned around, her voice like steel wrapped in ice. "I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this to stop the hurting." Kody finally looked up. "What are you talking about, Meri?" Meri hesitated. "I'll explain. But I won't be interrupted again. You've all had your say for years. Now it's my turn." 4 months earlier, unbeknownst to the rest of the family, Meri had received a visit from an anonymous source. A former lab tech who once worked at the private facility Robyn used for the DNA test that claimed Ariella was Kody's biological daughter. The man, pale and nervous, said just one line that haunted Meri's nights. "She paid me, cash, to switch samples." He handed Meri a photocopy of a test request with 2 patient IDs, one clearly mismatched with the Brown family's identifiers. The handwriting looked panicked, rushed. At the bottom, a forged signature. Robyn's Meri didn't believe it at first. But her gut told her to follow it. And so she hired a private investigator. Sometimes the smallest lie leads to the biggest avalanche. The PI traced the payments. 5 in total, totaling $12,500. Each sent to a personal account under the name J. Ramirez, a fake identity used by the tech. And just last week, Meri had flown to Salt Lake to retrieve the original test from the technician himself. Signed, sealed, notarized. And now? It sat in front of Judge Ramirez. He reviewed it again, lips tight. "Mrs. Brown, I need to understand. Are you saying the previous DNA test is false?" "Yes," Meri said calmly. "And the person who ran it will testify." Outside the courtroom, camera crews scrambled. Security had cut off the feed. Inside, Robyn's entire face had gone pale. She reached for Kody's hand. He didn't take it. "Robyn," the judge said, "do you deny this accusation?" Her voice cracked. "I did what I had to do." "For Ariella," gasps filled the room. Christine clapped a hand over her mouth. This wasn't just a confession. It was a war cry. And Meri had just fired the first cannon. The judge banged his gavel. "This court is now in recess. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. Ms. Brown, prepare your witness." "Mrs. Brown, prepare for cross-examination." Meri sat down. Her hands were shaking now, but Christine leaned forward and whispered something into her ear. "You're not alone this time." In the gallery, Janelle had just entered the room. She gave Meri a single nod. Across the aisle, Kody finally stood up and turned to Robyn. "What did you do?" he asked, voice shaking. Robyn didn't answer. She looked down at her lap. The next 30 minutes were a blur, a tight circle of whispers. Phone calls to attorneys. Papers shuffled, sweat wiped, eyes narrowed, and when the court resumed, it wasn't just the DNA tech who walked through the door. It was someone no one expected. Ariella, 15 years old, quiet, clutching a folded piece of paper in her hand. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red. She wasn't supposed to testify, but she had insisted, and what she would say, before the judge could even object, would set the entire courtroom ablaze. The truth wasn't just in the test. The truth was walking into the courtroom, shaking and brave, and ready to speak for herself. The silence in the courtroom after Ariella entered was unlike anything heard before. Not just quiet, but paralyzing. Even the judge paused, his gavel hovering in midair, unsure whether to object or listen. Ariella's voice was soft, shaky, barely above a whisper. "I know what my mom did," she said, "and I'm sorry. But I can't keep lying." The words didn't come from anger. They came from a place deeper than rage. They came from heartbreak. And that made them even more powerful. Robyn covered her mouth with both hands. Her entire body recoiled. Kody blinked like he didn't believe what he was seeing. Judge Ramirez leaned forward. "Miss Brown, you understand you're not under oath. Anything you say must be verified by testimony." "I'll swear in," Ariella said. "I want to tell the truth." The bailiff approached, holding a small Bible. Ariella placed her trembling hand on it. "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God." No one expected a 15-year-old to be the bravest person in the room. But there she was, shaking the entire courtroom with her honesty. Ariella took a seat beside the witness stand. "My mom told me, years ago, that there was a chance I wasn't Kody's biological daughter," she said. "But she said it didn't matter. That love was more important, that she'd fix it." Meri bowed her head, her fingers twisting in her lap. "She said if anyone found out," Ariella continued, "we could lose everything. The money, the house, the trust fund, my place in the family." Christine's eyes were full of tears. Janelle whispered something under her breath. A prayer or a curse? No one could tell. "And then," Ariella's voice cracked, "she brought me to a clinic. She said we'd take the test, but that she'd handle the rest." A hush fell again. "She paid someone. I didn't see how much, but I remember the envelope." This wasn't just a lie about DNA. This was a web that dragged a child into silence. Robyn stood abruptly. "Stop it, you don't know what you're saying." But the judge snapped. "Sit down, Mrs. Brown." Kody finally turned his face to Ariella, and his voice, it was hollow. "Are you saying I'm not your father?" Ariella's eyes welled with tears. "I don't know, Kody, but I don't want to be a pawn anymore." Meri's voice cut the air next. "That's why we're here, Your Honor, to find the truth without manipulation." Judge Ramirez cleared his throat, visibly shaken. "Bring in the technician." The bailiff opened the doors, and in walked a middle-aged man with a fading hairline, trembling hands, and a small box of records under his arm. He sat, was sworn in, and then faced the judge directly. "My name is Daniel Brooks. I was employed by Flagstaff DNA and Diagnostics from 2018 to 2022. I handled the sample Robyn Brown submitted for Ariella's paternity test in 2019. "And did you alter it?" the judge asked. Daniel exhaled. "Yes, I was paid $2,500 to ensure the sample that was tested came back positive." Gasps. Audible gasps. He reached into the box. "These are the original unaltered results. I kept them. I was afraid someday this would come back. When secrets are buried deep enough, only guilt survives to bring them to the surface." He passed the documents to the clerk. The judge took them, compared signatures, looked at the original chain of custody, then he closed the file. "Hard. Effective immediately," he said. "This court rules the 2019 DNA results inadmissible and fraudulent. A new test will be administered under court supervision within 48 hours. Robyn shook her head rapidly. "You can't do that." That's justice," the judge snapped. Meri finally let herself breathe. Ariella began to cry, silently, as Christine walked forward and gently took her hand. And then Kody stood. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. His voice was soft, low, and terrifying in its emptiness. "You lied to me," he said, looking at Robyn. She turned to him, reaching out. "I did it for you. For her." "No, all trust fund distributions for Ariella Brown are frozen. Custodial status will also be reviewed." That's when Robyn snapped. "I'm her mother. You can't do this." "You're the one who forced this court's hand," the judge replied. "And it's far from over." Session 2 could have ended right there, with the whole room in collapse. But what came next changed everything. Janelle rose from the bench in the gallery, holding a red folder. "Your Honor, if I may," Robyn screamed. "No, no more. She's lying too." But the judge nodded. "Proceed." And what Janelle handed over was a financial ledger, marked, flagged, and color-coded. Her voice was clear and unwavering. "This ledger tracks the trust fund payouts for each child. And you'll notice something. Ariella's account received an advance disbursement 6 months before the paternity test even took place." The judge froze. "You're saying the court awarded inheritance money based on a forged relationship?" "Yes, Your Honor," Janelle said. "And now we want it back. The lie wasn't just personal, it was financial, and it could be criminal." Meri turned to look at Robyn, not with rage, but disappointment so deep it echoed across the courtroom floor. "I don't care about the money," she whispered. "I care about what you did to that girl. And the camera, the only one," still quietly rolling for legal documentation, zoomed in as Robyn collapsed into her chair, clutching her chest. The courtroom didn't reopen for nearly an hour. Ariella had been escorted out through a private hallway, trembling, tears still slipping down her cheeks. Christine followed closely behind her, wrapping a jacket around her shoulders. Janelle stood in the hallway with Meri, watching the girl disappear into the back exit with a juvenile court liaison. And Kody? Kody hadn't moved from the bench. His hand gripped the edge of the table like he needed it to breathe. Across the room, Robyn was pacing. Her steps were erratic, uneven, almost manic, hair falling from her bun, eyeliner smeared, breathing sharp. Her attorney tried to calm her, but she pushed his hand away. "You don't get it," she hissed. "They're turning her against me. They're turning my own daughter against me." No one responded. No one could. When the lies finally crumble, it's not just the truth that's exposed. It's the person underneath. The judge returned, flanked by a child protection officer. "This court is reconvened under emergency review," he announced, voice sharp. "We will now address custodial concerns based on Ariella Brown's testimony and newly submitted financial evidence." Meri's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we are requesting a full trust freeze on the $240,000 disbursed prematurely to Robyn Brown, under the claim that Ariella was Kody Brown's biological child." Janelle handed over the backup ledger. "And there's more. It wasn't just the one payment. There were 8 trust fund transfers. Over $10,000 in total." Robyn finally snapped. "I used that money to build her future, to build our home." Kody stood now too, eyes wild, voice breaking. "Whose future, Robyn? Mine, hers, or yours?" She spun toward him. "Don't you dare!" But Kody didn't stop. His voice rose. Not loud, but raw. "I've defended you for a decade. I lost Meri, Janelle, Christine. I destroyed this family for you. And all this time, you've been lying?" Tears began to flood Robyn's face, streaking down like rivers of regret. But her voice stayed defensive, angry, cornered. "I lied because I was scared, because I thought they'd take everything from us. But sometimes the fear of losing control is what makes people destroy everything they were trying to protect." The judge interjected. "Mrs. Brown, your statements, while emotional, are not legal defenses." Her attorney stood quickly. "We are filing for an emergency injunction. We request full reinstatement of custodial authority over Ariella and demand suppression of all previous testimony by the minor, citing emotional manipulation by her siblings and stepmothers." Gasps erupted. Christine leapt up. "That is sick. That girl came here to tell the truth." "She came here coached," Robyn shouted. "You've all poisoned her." But it was too late. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Request for injunction is denied." And then he turned to the bailiff. "Escort Ms. Ariella Brown back into chambers. She will have her say, privately, before the court decides anything further." 30 minutes passed. No one breathed. Every second felt like glass cracking under weight. When Ariella returned, she handed the judge a handwritten letter. He read it. The courtroom fell silent. Ariella Brown has formally requested temporary guardianship be transferred from her mother to a court-appointed counselor until the DNA results return. She also wishes to stay with a family member who won't lie to her. Everyone looked around. And then, slowly, Ariella's gaze fell on Meri. Meri blinked. "Me?" Christine smiled. "She trusts you, Mare." "And Kody?" His body deflated. He was watching his house of cards fall in real time. Robyn, meanwhile, was spiraling. "I'm her mother," she screamed. "You can't do this. You don't understand what I've sacrificed." But the judge wasn't moved. "What you've done, Mrs. Brown, is under investigation. We will follow the law, not your version of it." For years, Robyn painted herself as the protector. Now, the courtroom saw her as the deceiver. The judge called a 48-hour recess. The next court session would reconvene. Only after the DNA samples were collected, verified, and submitted. This time under triple witness supervision, including a representative from the state. The room began to clear. Reporters rushed to send anonymous tips and leak notes. TLC producers tried to speak with Kody. He waved them off with a broken hand. Christine held Ariella's hand and said softly, "You're safe now? And Meri?" She walked alone into the lobby. She sat on a bench, and she cried. Not out of victory, but for the child who had to be braver than every adult in the room. Then, the bombshell. Just as Meri was heading to the parking lot, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. She hit play. The voice was male, conflicted, scared. It was Daniel Brooks, the DNA tech. "There's something else. I couldn't say it in court. I need to meet before someone gets to me first." It was after midnight when Meri pulled her SUV behind the dimly lit diner on the edge of Flagstaff. The city was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your breath sound like a siren. Inside, Daniel Brooks, the same DNA technician who had shaken the courtroom just hours earlier, was already waiting in a booth tucked deep in the corner. He looked worse than before. Eyes bloodshot, hair wild, fingers twitching around a chipped ceramic coffee mug. Meri slid into the booth slowly. She didn't speak at first. She just waited. "I shouldn't have called," he said, voice barely audible. "But there's something I didn't say in court. Something I couldn't." Meri folded her hands. "You're already under oath, Daniel. Whatever it is, it better be the truth." He nodded, then swallowed hard. "It wasn't just a single payment," he said. "Robyn didn't just pay me to switch the samples. She paid me to destroy the original." Meri blinked. "You said you kept a copy." "I did, but she doesn't know that." He reached into his coat and slid a manila envelope across the table. "These are the clinic's insurance logs, billing codes, time-stamped access files, everything I was supposed to shred." Meri opened the folder. Her breath caught. There, in black and white, was a name no one expected. The funding source for the paternity test wasn't Robyn, it was a family LLC. Nest Egg Holdings, the same LLC that handled the Brown Kids Education Trust. "She didn't just lie about paternity," Meri whispered. "She used the family trust to fund the forgery." Daniel leaned in. "She laundered the test through your kid's future. That's why I called. This wasn't just personal anymore. This was criminal. And the target wasn't just Kody. It was every child in the Brown family." Meri stood up. "Fast. Get in the car," she told him. "We're going to the courthouse." Inside the family courtroom the next morning, things were already unraveling. Kody hadn't spoken to Robyn since the night before. He sat beside her, but not with her. Their chairs angled apart, his arms crossed, his jaw locked. Christine, Janelle, and several of the adult children had filled the back row. The judge entered. The bailiff banged the gavel, but before the judge could speak, Meri stormed in, Daniel at her side, and dropped the manila envelope on the table. "Your Honor," she said, "I have new evidence, and it changes everything." The judge called for a recess. A private session was ordered. Inside chambers, Meri stood tall, voice calm, eyes burning. "This isn't just about paternity," she said. "This is fraud, funded by money that belonged to all our kids." The judge flipped through the folder, page after page, of line items billing Robyn's DNA manipulation to the Shared Family LLC, charges hidden under medical review, health screening, and minor consent forms. "This is enough for federal review," the judge muttered. "Forgery, trust misappropriation," and then he looked up. "But this still doesn't prove motive." That's when Meri said it. She did it to secure Ariella's spot as primary beneficiary. Gasps from the gallery. Robyn jumped from her seat. No, I never. But Janelle stood. We knew something was wrong when the trust updated and Ariella's percentage doubled. She was listed as the only minor child with automatic access to emergency medical funds and real estate rollover. Christine rose next. She forged those papers to make sure her daughter inherited everything, and ours were left out. Robyn didn't just lie to the court. She built an empire on the backs of children she never planned to protect. The judge slammed the file shut. This will go to the district. Mrs. Brown, you are barred from accessing any financial assets tied to the trust. Effective immediately, Kody stood. What happens to the rest of us? That depends, the judge said. On whether you knew. Kody swallowed hard. I didn't, Meri looked at him. Didn't want to? The judge called for a week-long postponement while the state financial forensic team launched an emergency audit of the LLC, and then came the most unexpected moment of all. A new witness walked in. Tall, clean-cut, nervous. My name is Jason Marks, he said. I was the notary who filed the trust update. And I was told it was for Christine's daughter. But Robyn told me to change the name. He held up a copy of the original draft. Christine rushed forward. That's Isabel's clause. The judge turned to Robyn. Is this true? Robyn didn't answer. She couldn't. She collapsed into her chair, whispering, I didn't know they'd find it all. The courtroom wasn't just dealing with a DNA lie. They were standing in the wreckage of a decade-long betrayal. The judge rose from the bench. Court will recess for 7 days. In that time, a full financial review will be conducted. Pending results of the new DNA test and investigation into document tampering, criminal charges may be filed. No one moved. No one breathed. But outside the courtroom, reporters were already gathering. And TLC? They issued a statement within minutes. Production for Season 20 is currently paused pending legal outcomes. As Meri left the building, her phone buzzed. A text. No name, just a photo. It was of the inside of a safety deposit box. Tucked inside, a silver flash drive, and a sticky note. It read, the real test was done. You're going to want to see it. Meri didn't sleep that night. She sat alone in her kitchen, the house dark, the lights off, except for the small glow of the silver flash drive lying on the table like a loaded weapon. She stared at it for hours, afraid to plug it in, afraid of what it might show, but more afraid not to. At 3:42 a.m., she finally did it. Her laptop whirred to life. The drive clicked in. Inside was only one file. Truth, final move. She clicked. The video was shaky, handheld. Daniel Brooks sat in front of a clinic terminal. The date stamp, August 4th, 2019. He looked nervous. Whoever's watching this, he began, this is the original untouched result of Ariella Brown's paternity test. I'm recording this in case something happens to me, he typed. The screen behind him loaded a file. Patient. Ariella B. tested. Against Kody B. Result, 0.0% probability of paternity. Then he spoke again. I was ordered to delete this file. Replace it. Falsify the chain of custody. Robyn Brown paid me cash. I didn't ask questions. But this is the real result. I kept it because it didn't feel right. He stared directly into the camera. She's not Kody's daughter. And Robyn knew. The truth was no longer hidden. It was recorded, time-stamped, and undeniable. Meri's hand flew to her mouth. Her knees nearly buckled. She hit pause. Then rewind. Then play again, and then... She sent it to her lawyer. By 8 p.m., a judge had been alerted. By 9:15, the courtroom was reconvened. Inside courtroom 7B, the air was tight, coiled like a spring. Kody sat alone, staring forward. Silent. Robyn arrived late, hair undone, no makeup. Looking 10 years older than the day before. Her attorney whispered frantically. She refused to speak. Meri entered with a folder in her hand. Inside, the flash drive. A printed transcript. And the moment the Brown family had tried to avoid for years, the judge sat. Mrs. Brown, you've requested an emergency hearing. Present your evidence. Meri walked forward. Place the flash drive on the desk like a final bullet. Your Honor, she said, voice steady. This contains video proof from Daniel Brooks, recorded in 2019. It confirms the paternity test was faked, and Ariella is not Kody, Brown's biological daughter. The judge stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Play it. The courtroom screen blinked to life. Daniel's face appeared as the video rolled. No one made a sound. When it ended, with that final line, "She's not Kody's daughter." And Robyn knew. The room didn't erupt. It imploded. Kody didn't blink. He just breathed. Slow, sharp, and deep. Robyn turned ghost white. Janelle whispered, "Oh my God!" Christine began to cry. Sometimes the quietest moments carry the loudest betrayals. Robyn's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we request a recess." But the judge cut him off. "This hearing is no longer about custody or trust funds. This is a potential criminal proceeding." He looked to the bailiff. "Secure the evidence. Contact the district attorney. Begin the fraud evaluation immediately." Then he turned to Robyn. "Mrs. Brown, do you deny the evidence we've just seen?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Meri stood slowly. "Tell the truth, Robyn. Tell it now, before someone else does it for you." And then Robyn cracked. Tears spilled, but not the soft ones from sympathy. These were ragged sobs born of collapse. "You want the truth?" She screamed. Fine. She stood in front of the courtroom, her legs trembling, shoulders hunched. "I met someone before Kody, before the show. Before Flagstaff. His name was Jason. He left. I didn't think he'd come back. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked." Meri watched her with wide eyes. Christine's jaw dropped. "I told Kody I was pregnant with his child," Robyn confessed. "I thought it would bind us together. I thought it would make him choose me. Keep me." She wiped her face furiously. "And then when the test came up, when the trust was opening, I couldn't risk it. So I paid Daniel to switch it. And yes, I used the LLC because I didn't have the money. And I told myself it was still family money." She collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. The courtroom didn't shout, didn't hiss. It just froze. Because there was nothing left to uncover. Robyn had confessed it all. The judge sat back slowly. He looked over the bench. Then, in the calmest voice yet, he said, "Mrs. Brown, based on your testimony and the video evidence, this court has no choice but to recommend immediate referral to the Attorney General's office for criminal investigation, including charges of fraud, perjury, document tampering, and fiduciary abuse of a minor's trust." Robyn shook her head. No, please, don't take her away." But it wasn't the judge who answered. It was Ariella, now standing at the courtroom door. Escorted by a family services officer, she had heard everything, and her voice cut through the air like glass. "You already did that." The courtroom fell into chaos as Ariella ran down the hall. Robyn collapsed in tears. Kody buried his face in his hands. And Christine rushed after the girl who'd just lost everything. The judge slammed the gavel. Session adjourned until further notice. Meri watched the storm unfold, her hand covering her mouth. Tears of pain and release falling fast. But just as she turned to leave, the court officer tapped her shoulder. "There's one more issue," he whispered. "We got a tip from the flash drive metadata," Meri blinked. "What kind of tip?" He hesitated, then said, "There's a second child. Another paternity test, filed under a different name." Meri stood in the courthouse parking lot, the cold morning wind whipping strands of her hair across her tear-streaked face. "Another child," she whispered. "Dayton," the officer's voice echoed in her head. "A second DNA test. Different name, different result. Hidden." Meri climbed into her car, hands trembling, and immediately called Janelle. "Meet me, now, no questions." "You need to see something." Inside Janelle's kitchen an hour later, they huddled over Meri's laptop. She pulled up the flash drive metadata the court hadn't examined in full. There it was. Filing number 2, D. Brown 2003 unverified.pdf. Attached name, Dayton Jesse Brown. And beneath it, tested against Kody Brown. Meri opened the file. The result? No % probability of paternity. Janelle clapped her hand to her chest. "Oh my God, Meri." "2 children?" Meri nodded. Robyn never just lied once. She built an entire identity on this. And now I want to know, who knew? This wasn't just a case of altered paperwork. It was a systematic lie that rewrote a family tree. And there was only one person left who could possibly confirm what happened behind the scenes. Kody. By 10:45 a.m., Meri filed a request for a formal re-examination of Dayton Brown's adoption paperwork and paternity filings. The court granted an emergency hearing. A temporary judge was assigned, Judge Elena Torres, known for her zero tolerance for manipulation and her fast decisions. The courtroom reconvened, this time with even more reporters pressing at the doors. Security was doubled. all electronics confiscated, and when Kody entered, his face looked hollow, tired, haunted. Robyn? She wasn't there. Her attorney submitted a written request for medical leave, citing emotional trauma. But the court wasn't pausing for Robyn anymore. Judge Torres stood behind the bench. This court has reviewed evidence suggesting potential misrepresentation in the adoption and trust registration of Dayton Brown. Mr. Kody Brown, you are hereby subpoenaed to testify under oath. Kody stood slowly. His legs wobbled slightly, but he didn't protest. He took the oath, and then the questions began. Mr. Brown, the judge said, are you the biological father of Dayton Jesse Brown? Kody blinked, looked down, then looked up again. No, I'm not. Murmurs exploded in the courtroom. Did you sign legal documents in 2015 claiming otherwise? He hesitated. I did. Under what understanding? Kody's voice cracked. Robyn told me he had no father. That he needed one.